The views and opinions expressed in Media Litter Sandwich do not reflect on the views of the network, station, studio, website, sponsors, guests, hosts themselves, anyone or anything else associated or even not associated with this podcast. Maybe not even the person that said them. In other words, do your own research and do not sue anyone over what is said on this show.
Welcome to Media Litter Sandwich. Yes, I know I said that I was going to be on hiatus. I am technically on hiatus. I had a chance to talk to a friend of mine that's been busting his butt, running around, doing a million things. I know I normally don't talk about politics. This still really isn't about politics. Media Litter Sandwich is still about creators, and this is a large media thing that's happening all over. And if there's a media litter thing that people are trying to make us take a bite out of, it's this. Jamiil, tell me about what you're a community organizer. What does that even mean?
Yeah, that's a great question for every single community organizer, because I think a lot of us have different definitions of what that is. So I would say, just from my perspective, community organizing is just if you put yourself in a role where you are getting information and disseminating information in an engaging way to get people out to do something, to further a movement, to further a cause, to speak, to be champions of something going on. So I would say it's funny because I didn't even really use the term for myself until recently, till some friends acknowledged no, that's what you do. So I would say that started probably back when I was in high school, organizing for LGBT causes. And then that pushed through college with LGBT and Black causes and politics and all these other things. I think it's just ballooned over time. I've just gotten to work in so many different LGBT organizations, Black organizations, political campaigns, nonprofits, higher education, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think community organizing is kind of just what it sounds like. Like you're the person or one of many people who reaches out to your network, or maybe even further than that, and gives them information, gives them invites, makes them aware of things that are happening, and attempt to draw them in so they can build up and further the cause that you are championing.
Okay, so let's talk about let's give you some credit. Let's talk about why you can talk about some of the things we're going to talk about. There's a protest going on. Can you even count how many you've been to in the past? I don't know how long you could give the range.
I'm going to say somewhere around 30, I think.
That's been the past few months.
Right, just recently, in the last, probably in the last 60 days, I've probably gone to about 30.
How many of these would you be considered an organizer of, if any?
For these, I think I wouldn't be a lead organizer or anything like that. There's no, there aren't any recent Black Lives Matter protests or movements or anything that I have been one of the front champions of. But I would definitely say for the majority of those I've gone to, I've done some sort of community organizing, like getting friends to come out, networking, sending messages to people, disseminating information, putting together calendars so people know what's going on, using my decent sized social network to spread that information along.
When you say disseminate information, what does that mean?
Just spreading it along. So if I don't know how, I guess people just know things because I just get messages sometimes do you know the Nextdoor app?
Oh yeah.
So I don't know how this person found me, but it's someone in my neighborhood who every time there's a Black Lives Matter anything happening near Southfield, she messages me and just goes, "Hey, heads up, we're organizing this thing." And so I take that information and I'll screenshot it or do something and spread it out to the masses, share it on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever else I can disseminate that information through work. For a good portion of time, especially when this was all really first kicking up, I'd even go look at other cities' Facebook events because you can search Facebook by city. and especially these lead organizers are organizing in as many ways as possible. And I would look up, especially for work, I would look up protests happening in the Detroit area, in the Cleveland area, in the Phoenix area, in the Charlotte area, put all those together by date, by time, put links with all of them. Here's the location, and share that with people. So that's how I'd be disseminating info.
I try to do that for conventions, and I said I'm done.
But I think that kind of speaks to the role of a community organizer, because these are conversations I've been having with other people who are active in these protests and whatnot, is that your role evolves. Like sometimes you are at the very front of the line and you're championing it and you're chanting and you're sharing a ton of information. And sometimes you take a back seat and you let other people take the lead. Or you just you might be the person who gets people together and then goes, all right, guys, you got this. I'll see you in a bit.
But dude, I give you a lot of credit for being able to do that. That takes a lot of it. It shows a passion, and I don't want to spend too much time on this. I kind of want to move around, but go ahead and just, you say you've been doing this, going to protests and helping out. I know you did a lot of marches and a lot of information stuff for a long time. Why are you passionate? Just, briefly, I know we could spend an hour on this.
Oh, for sure. I think,
and I don't want to push you to say anything you don't want to say as well. So,
oh, no worries. I think just not just with this, but just overall, I've just always had this passion, and I don't know if it maybe comes from my parents, right? Like the things that they did in their lives and their professions. But I've always had this drive to want to be involved with the community. Like I just want to make sure that everyone can be good. Cause it sucks. Like as a kid, my family, we were middle class for sure. And my parents are trying to work their ways up the ranks. And, but both of them come from very poor families, especially my mom's side. They come from super, super poor families. So, we were always my parents would sometimes get a little bit of crap from their friends and family and stuff for oh, you made it. And then you moved. I was like, well, kinda, I had to move and have my kids have better resources and stuff like that. So it always sucked to go back to them and see friends and see cousins and whatever, not have the same resources for no logical reason. So when it comes to any sort of cause that I support, I think it's just human compassion. I just want everyone to feel like they are worth as much as the next person, and not feel like they have to beg to be seen as equal or seen as good enough, or have to spend their life being exhausted just to get what someone else is just naturally handed to them for no reason other than, could it be where they were born, who their parents are, who they have social connections with, what color their skin is, what religion they are, etc. I just think it's just right that everyone should feel safe wherever they go. Everyone should feel like they're getting paid the same as everyone else. Everyone should feel like the people that are to protect and serve us are protecting and serving every single one of us, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's the biggest motivation. If I were to boil it down to the core of it, I think that's that. I think that's it.
Okay. Now I want to kind of go into some of the more recent, not so much events, but because I want to talk about the protests and the organizing of it. I just want to make it clear because it is the current year, and I don't normally say this, but I'm going to say this. I want to ask questions that I know the answer to or have a good idea of the answer to. Don't call me ignorant just because I'm asking a question, because that's pretty ignorant in itself. These are just things I feel like need to be said, or someone's going to be shouting them. And yes, I have a disclaimer. So if someone shared a clip of this and you're calling me an idiot, go listen to the disclaimer, because you're probably going to laugh at it and you're going to feel like an idiot when you listen to the disclaimer. Now, Black Lives Matter is an organization. It's also a movement. It's also a saying. It's three different things. Mm-hmm. What one do people kind of I kind of got an idea, but which one do you think people relate to the most or don't realize? Do people realize it's three different things? It doesn't matter.
I think a good amount of people don't realize that it's three different things. Because I think the biggest thing that is at the front of it is the movement itself. And then I think the biggest thing that's at the front is the movement itself. I think people are most riled up by the words. And then I think the organization itself is usually like the last thing. So the Black Lives Matter organization, if I'm not mistaken, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was birthed out of the Michael Brown's killing in Ferguson. Is that right?
I'm not sure. I've heard a couple different things. I've heard, I just assume it's just a morph from another thing to another thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So don't quote me as the religious text here, but
yeah.
At least
there's a lot of written things about it. If they really want to know the research, they could go and do the real research. We're not historians here. We're just having a discussion.
Absolutely. Perfect. So regardless, the organization was birthed, and I know it was created by Black women as a nonprofit organization to drive change for the causes that the Black Lives Matter movement is behind. So I think the organization is important to think of, but I think because that's just one organization, there's so many smaller, equal-sized, and larger organizations that are fighting for racial justice and racial equity. So that's just one piece of it. So I don't think it matters too much to get hung up on the organization itself, because even if you're not supporting that specific organization, there are so many others that you can choose from that are going to further the movement. I think the important thing is the movement itself, and the movement is that Black Lives Matter. And I think it's just as simple as that. It's perplexing sometimes. Obviously, I've looked at the other side's arguments and whatnot, but just the sentence itself it's not that volatile, right? It's literally just a statement like Black Lives Matter. Like if before all this happened, right? If this were 10 years ago and I was just talking to someone casually and they were like, you know what, white lives matter or Asian lives matter or whatever lives matter, I'd be like, yeah, totally. They do. Like as facts, 100%. But since the opposition took such offense to the phrase Black Lives Matter, it's evolved into different things.
I think it started evolving when, we'll jump back to a second before I hit that, just because you hit it when you said there's multiple organizations. I got to compare it to what I know, the Occupy movement. When people are saying, oh, the Occupy movement are these people. I'm like, hold up. There's more organizations and more point of views you'll ever see over there. You can't even say the Occupy movement is about blank because you had so many organizations and each one had their thing. And of course you had idiots because you have idiots that show up to anything.
Sure.
And I think that's where something, and that's where a lot of people jump on and get wild up because people only see what the media shows them. And boy, is the media messed up on so many things. They either show you only the good or only the bad, or they take their own side, and it's insane. But people are insane and listen to them, and that drive whatever it's different things. So like from the outside, you don't know why one person went there. You don't know what organization they're part of, because there were people that would shout Black Lives Matter and then use it as these lives don't, or we need, because there were some connections with the some of the people that were held up and family members that were affiliated with gangs and people actually push for riots and things like that. And that, of course, does not speak for anyone, especially when you talk about a movement, because as I mentioned, so many organizations and so many individuals, they're not all together in one thing. When people do get all together in one thing, that kind of makes you think. But and that's what makes these things, I think, the hardest, because I feel like if you ask almost every organization, so what's the end goal? They're going to give you a different answer. And I'm not talking about a general answer. I'm not talking, oh, more equality. Well, what do you mean? Where are we looking? Like, what would you count as more equality? You know, because when you talk about systemic, you have to, then that gets defined. Let's say, in black and white in laws, where you can actually see and draw a line. Because I'm a textualist. That's when it comes to things like that. I'm a textualist. I need to be able to see it and see it long. So if you say, "Oh, well, this person did wrong," like, well, yeah, they did. Here's the line. Of course, they did wrong. So yeah, we're all upset about it. Like when we're talking about all these names of people, what's going on. Most people don't disagree. Like, yeah, that's wrong. We agree with you.
Yeah.
Is that something that there's? I'm sure there's discussion of, but is there an agreement on any of that? Like where? Because I know there's a list of demands, but let's be honest, different organizations put forth some weird stuff.
Yeah. So that's what's really interesting, because you're right. We all, if you ask me what I want out of the movement, it's different than what someone else wants out of the movement. I've said to a few friends at different protests, I'm like, I think I'm realizing that I'm even more radical than I thought I was. So, yeah, I don't know. I think there's some basic things that are agreed upon, but because they're the most high profile, right? Like ending police brutality, period.
Okay,
Right?
I don't think anyone's against that, by the way, and I'm pretty sure there's laws already on the book on that.
Right, exactly.
Enforcing always needs to happen.
Exactly. So that's one of those things where everyone can agree we need to end police brutality, but the method we go about that, I don't think there's agreement on. There's defunding the police, there's reforming the police, there's retraining the police, right? There's all these different avenues that people are supporting. So I don't think that currently has one driven goal. And I think that's something, I don't want to say it's an issue, but I think that's one of our crutches as the Black Lives Matter movement.
It's something, and I don't, if I use the term mob mentality, is that an insult or is that degrading at all? I'm curious.
I think it depends. Yeah.
Or is it,
kind
or
of.
does it depend on context? Because that's the way I kind of see when you're trying to figure out those fine points. Mob mentality, meaning that there's, you're looking for majority vote and not necessarily logical pointing at or going with the best decision. You're going with the majority and people go with how they feel. And when you get a bunch of people together, depending on that mood, it can go way different than if you're talking to each individually one by one. That's what I mean. That's what I mean by mob mentality in this case.
Yeah, I think
pretty much every case when I use that term.
Sure, I get that. And I think there's definitely an element there's an element of that, because I think back to the first Detroit protest, and huge numbers of people, and the first one this year, and we were marching, and we were this huge group, and then there was a point where there were these like polling views of like what we should do next, and most of the group stuck in this main group, and we went about our way, and the other portion of the group went a different route, and they had a completely different experience than the group I was with. The group I was with felt like we were being kind of like prodded and bullied, but the other group felt that more, and then they actually like retaliated, and that was like the first cop car window broken. So not saying good or bad or anything, but just the issue that we found over time going to these protests is that there wasn't a clear vision, right? There were loud voices, but there wasn't a loud voice. And I think that's one of the holdbacks for this movement right now, which it's been fairly effective thus far. And I know this is going to be a long fight, but I think if we could find a way to rally around some key people, like that's, we read about the civil rights movement back in the 60s. There were key people that popped up that began there were key authors, there were key organizers, key pastors, and all these other people who became these big personalities and began to travel around the country and speak their mission, and people identified with it. And I don't think we have that yet. And part of it too, I think this,
and it's hard because the one thing that I'm sure someone's yelling, I just have to point out because I'm sure people are yelling at, because the organization is founded by trained Marxists. I don't know if you've seen those videos where several of the key organizers are talking about how they got their training and all that stuff. They're key Marxists, which I personally think should, I'm just going to leave that alone. It's weird whenever someone says, this is what I believe in, they're doing the right things. Like, if you lived during that time and during that regime, you would have been killed just for who you are. Do you realize that? Like, oh, that's not what I mean. Like, okay.
Well, that's why, kind of like you and I were talking about before we started, there's value in knowing the different sides. And on top of that, there's value in knowing the history, because historical reference is fantastic. Historical replication is not always the best. So
and I just watched this. If people want to look up, Woodrow Wilson, probably our worst president, when he was and when he was working with Princeton. I think he was president of Princeton University. Pretty much rewrote history books and just terrible. Left so many key figures out.
I think what's cool about this movement, honestly, is the scope of it can actually, in my head, the scope of it can be as big as we want it to be, because I think about, you brought up the Occupy movement, and there's so many elements of that are directly woven into the Black Lives Matter movement, because there's, we saw how greedy Wall Street has been and is being, and how large corporations are just like gaining more and more and more rights and power. And that ties directly into like my passions, which is making sure people are taken care of, making sure people can like live. And part of making sure people can live is making sure people aren't running rampant with your money, your earned work, the things that you should have. You're getting the resources that you need. And Black Lives Matter comes right in too. And like feminism comes in right there. Like there's so many different movements that are intersecting right now. I love that Black Lives Matter is the biggest right now. But I think there's room. I don't know. There's either room for like evolution, or like I was saying, we still need those key figures to pop up. And I think those are coming eventually. With the way the internet is right now, the internet age, information is traveling so fast, it's hard to keep up. And there's so many like flash issues that pop up so quickly and then die out. We really need some people to show up and like be institutions that we can rally around and really get some stuff done.
Well, we get stuck on these ways of looking at things, and that kind of comes part the all lives matter thing. In a conversation, like all these memes show, where one person is Black Lives Matter and someone else responds, all lives matter. You lose some context there, because that guy was a dick. But when you're talking about a larger scale, and let's say, Black Lives Matter, how does a company respond to that? Because we're in a cancel culture now, where people literally demand companies and industries and stores to respond. And it's like, why? It's like, well, we believe that all lives matter. We see everyone as individual. Oh, wrong answer. Canceled. I do think there's a difference here. And you know where I'm going with this. You kind of helped push another one of the protests that happened. And I think it was, and I love the way you were handling this. If you could talk about what happened at a university, events that started that, I'd love to hear your side of that.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, our alma mater, our wonderful university.
We've both been there for many years. I actually taught there for a little bit.
Yeah, and I worked there. We both worked there as well.
Yeah, both worked there. Yep.
So
ironically, you still put on the events. Well, I don't run the soundboard for your events no more, but we did that for many years.
Yeah, I'm still very much tied to the institution. So especially as things were ramping up, I think there's, I don't expect, and I don't necessarily want every company to pander, right? There's different like caring about the cause and just like saying words. And I feel like, we went to a university which is in Southfield, and like
Southfield, Michigan, for those that don't know.
Yeah, Southfield, Michigan. So this city is black. Like it's a very black city. Like it's been black my entire life, like some decades now. And it's majority black. It's supported by black institutions like the Southfield, especially when I used to work in politics. Southfield was notorious for being so like the residents being so ingrained with the churches in Southfield, which are all big black churches. So like the university is in Southfield and is in some way supported by what Southfield does, by Southfield's policy. I remember when when Southfield was revitalizing and they were creating their downtown district, Lawrence Tech like pushed and lobbied hard to be a part of that district because they wanted to experience the growth and the benefits and probably some of the discounts and stuff that come with it too, but visibility. So if you're going to do that and you're going to be in a black if you're going to be in a black city,
to put things in context, when you enter the city of Southfield, it says home of Lawrence Tech University.
Right.
If you come up one of the roads, there's even big robotic arm that moves, it's getting solar light and it'll move around, to advertise Lawrence Tech. It's a big part.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
and yes, I'll admit I do live in Southfield as well.
Yeah, so we're still here. So
we're like 3 miles from Detroit. We could claim both.
Exactly. So that's where it comes in too, because Southfield is so close to Detroit.
It's a sister city.
100%. We rely on each other's business. Like one of the main arteries, the lodge comes through Southfield, and like you can just look at the skylines. Like Southfield has such a big built up business district, comparable. Like most of the other suburbs don't have this. But yeah, it's supported by the black community. It's next to Detroit, which is majority black and one of the blackest large cities in the nation. And what we do
and Arabic, it's either the second or third biggest Arabic, and then of course Dearborn's the biggest ratio, which is again right next to Detroit. Sorry,
right? No, that's totally right.
I just say it's very diverse in different ways that people don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's fully worth mentioning for sure. It's not just Detroit isn't just black people. There's like Metro Detroit is a really big melting pot. Like Detroit has a huge Latinx population as well in Southwest Detroit. Yeah.
Detroit's one of the few places that has. When Wayne State and some of the other university and libraries would do, they'd actually do full events at Lawrence Tech, and I used to do archives. There was one cultural. Lecture that talked about all the Russian monuments and background in Detroit, because one of the Michigan reserve units actually went through, tried to push the revolution in Soviet Union or Russia, whatever, was in Russia. So there's a lot of ties. There's a lot of ties, obviously a lot of French ties, obviously. It's one of those few countries, one of the few things, like there's Polish town, there's the Italians, there's several different types of Middle Easterns, especially over in Dearborn. There's that, there's this. You got your Mexican town, you got this town, you got that town. It's a really strange melting pot. That's Detroit. It's really crazy.
For sure. And it's also really unfortunate that we're also one of the most segregated metro areas in the country. Like statistically, we are very high on that list. And you can just, if you haven't before, Google it, like you can see demographic maps, and like 8 Mile, it hard cuts off the race switches all of a sudden. So I feel it's kind of a little bit of a unique piece there, because it kind of stretches that Detroit flow up into the suburbs. And so yeah, I put some pressure on Lawrence Tech, because what Lawrence Tech specializes in supports the city of Detroit directly. Like the amount of engineers we produce for the big three and all these other companies that thrive off of Detroit is huge. We're an institution in this area. Like we have to exist for these places to have local candidates to be able to rely on. And it sucks to me to look at Lawrence Tech from the day I started to even now, and it not reflect the communities that it's in. And I think universities, especially universities, have a responsibility to educate their community, to serve their community. And Lawrence Tech is less than a mile from Southfield High, where I went to high school. And that is also very majority Black high school. And I remember, being a freshman at Lawrence Tech, and I didn't know anyone from my class from Southfield High. None of them went to Lawrence Tech. Why weren't they enticed to be there? Why wasn't there's multiple high schools to leverage off of, especially one that lies in STEM, which is Lawrence Tech's bread and butter. So I just think, I think it's a responsibility, especially of a university, a higher education institution, especially in 2020, where it's like it's so necessary to have a degree. Like it's just we're at a point now where it's like so many places require you to have a bachelor's at least. All places are pushing for masters. We should support our community. So I made a Facebook post and tweeted at Lawrence Tech saying, hey, what's your stance on this? Because as a university, these are the people that should be like, you should have a commitment to this community. You should have a commitment.
I think the way you phrase it was you bid to be part of this big thing in Southfield. You're on all the signs represent, saying you represent the community and you're to push for the community. What are you doing for the community right now? Because you don't exactly reflect from the community when we look at you. So how are you going to reflect on the community right now in this huge time of need? We got the pandemic going on. We got this going on. We got all how are you going to reflect to this? And and that's not a bad question. I thought that was a very good question.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, and thank you for wording it better than I did. I also, so it was just kind of a shame where they responded with some really generic, very like, we care about everybody, kind of post, which is great. I want you to care about everybody. But it just felt so like PR written response. Yeah. And they also followed up by posting on Instagram with an All Lives Matter post. And it just felt like a slap in the face. Like, and again, no one's arguing that all lives don't matter. There is no one. The Black Lives Matter movement does not stand for, it's not saying other lives do not matter. And I think so many people have said that. But we know what that phrase means. Like that phrase has become so...
there were some people that ran with that phrase to the point where like, that's not what we're saying. Would you please stop it? And I think the anti all lives matter phrase, I think it kind of got a little bit out of proportion, but I can't, it's almost like you can't defend saying all lives matter once you look at the whole picture. However, I also don't expect a mom and pop ice cream parlor to look at the entire picture when people demand that they respond like, oh, we think all lives matter and we will respect everybody. I don't expect a mom and pop place that spent all their lives trying to work up their business to say that think that there's any malice in that. However, a university, a PR university should know better.
Yeah. So they, the alumni base didn't like it, nor did the undergrads. So they got some heat, which was good because I talked to the dean of students. I talked to the university. I met with someone in marketing. There's just been a lot of...
You met with Bruce, didn't you, for marketing?
No, I don't know her name. It was a woman. Okay. Someone. It was brief, but which were good conversations to I'm glad they were starting. I don't think the university's doing enough, but they put out.
Well, you talked to the president of the university, Dr. Modgill.
Yeah, I did.
The fact that he called you, I think says a lot.
Yeah, I chuckled when he called.
Yeah, this man would even this man would barely talk to me when I was miking him up. When I would mic him up.
Yeah, right. He talked up a very nice game about how valuable of a student I was and how active I was, and we didn't get to talk that much. I was like, whatever. Like again, platitudes, but nice things were said, but my eye is still on them and all these other organizations that if you decide to then use the Black Lives Matter phrase and believe it, now you have to do something with it. Because I feel like I get the same reaction when Pride comes around every June. All of a sudden, oh, look, Delta Airlines is gay now. Are you? Are you really? You now know, especially once gay marriage became legal, then all of a sudden every company was like, oh, here's my rainbow logo. We love the gays. It's like, you didn't love them a month ago. What happened?
It's interesting you say that, because there are companies that people boycott if they don't. And that's the weird, thing about virtual signaling. It means nothing. But we're in such a strange time where if people don't, then all of a sudden people are mad at you. And I don't understand that. I'm not saying can you relate, or at least like, do you know anyone or know where people are coming from when they think, oh, you don't have a rainbow flag? Because I agree with you. Why is every logo I'm looking at rainbow when none of these things? Why are video games logos rainbow when they have nothing to do with anything and related, and aren't really doing anything other than a pirate game with a rainbow flag that now you can really troll people. Most toxic players in some PvP games that I know sport all the rainbow outfits if they're if they're like, we're really going to be toxic today, and so they wear all the rainbow stuff because it.
It's like it's like Rockstar Games, for instance. I used to love Rockstar, but they're kind of pissed me off right now. But anyway, or there. But Rockstar Games, for instance, they have Red Dead Redemption 2, which is set in the Old West, which is set in 1899. And there's the KKK exists in there, but in the story, they exist as like this goofy, like, basically they exist to die. Like, they're bad people, and they highlight that they're bad people, and they're really clumsy. They burn themselves up in a cross burning. Like, it's a whole mess. And like, it's a good piece added to this world that they built. But then they let PC players figure out how to exploit the game, and then start spamming any sort of like online characters that were black or just not white. They started spamming them by dropping KKK characters all over the place. I was like, Rockstar, you can't say that you care about this. You can't say like, I care about Black Lives Matter, and then allow this to happen, which fortunately they listened and they adjusted all of that. But it's things like that where if you're going to be a company and identify with a cause, you need to actually do something with it then. Like, don't just change your badge to rainbow because you can. If you're going to change the rainbow, do something with that. If you're, as a company, if Clorox is going to say Black Lives Matter, all right, Clorox, I don't care, but what are you doing about it? Like, let me see what your board looks like. Let me see what you're doing for your black employees. Let me see what you're doing for the communities that your factories exist in, right?
If you're a shoe company, stop having sweat labor shops.
Right. Exactly. So a lot of times personally, I know there's, you can't help the internet mob. It's just, it is. But I'm not a fan of us just canceling things to cancel things, because I think it's, number one, it's not effective. Right. Things that people get canceled all the time. Like, how many times has Chick-fil-A been canceled for hating gays? And they're still an insanely popular and successful fast food restaurant. Right. So anything like that, like, whatever. So
you say that, then the other side comes like, it's like, yeah, but do you shop at Salvation Army? Because that was one of the charities that they got blasted for donating, because the Salvation Army is was doing conversion stuff, and they were, they do a lot of the legislation. When they say they were donating to companies that do that do, what do they call it? Lobbying against it. That's one of them that they're talking about was Salvation Army, and there was a Special Olympics, and then there was another charity that also works with kids and rehabilitations and things like that. Like, all the charities they were doing does multiple things. That just happened to be one of them. It's like, but you still shop at Salvation Army, and that was their biggest donations at the time, was just Salvation Army. Like, you still shop there. You can't hate Chick-fil-A for giving money to a company you also give money to.
Yeah, I think that's where the research comes in. Like, again, talking about like knowing our history, knowing the other side. If you're gonna, like, if I'm gonna boycott Chick-fil-A, and I gotta figure out why I'm boycotting them, right? Like, it's not just, oh, they hate gays. All right, but like specific, let's get specific. Like, what do they dislike? Oh, they're donating, or the owners are donating to anti-LGBT organizations. All right, what organizations are they? Salvation Army? All right, then I need to disconnect from that as well. Like, I need to do my proper research. And I don't think there's much excuse these days for being just like completely ignorant. I get it. Like, everyone doesn't know everything. I get it. But we have so much at our fingertips. It's just like, you can figure stuff out.
We have a connection to human, what humans remember of our history, but we're gonna listen to a meme first.
I know. It kills me when you see
people are gonna get mad when you post true stuff too. It's utterly ridiculous. Is there any, when everyone gets together, when they're there, I know people can agree on general things, but is there any like particular thing, like if you want someone to walk away with one goal, like this is what I want happen, what is it? If you could sign an executive order, this law is going to change or this is going to happen, what do you think would get the most consent?
Oh boy. Wow. That's a solid question. What would we all agree on? I think
you don't have to say all. Let's just say the majority, because you're never gonna get everyone. We've talked about that earlier. Now, what would the majority? Well, we're not even gonna say 80%. We're gonna say 60%.
Right. I think so. Something I value in my stance and a lot of other various organizers I've seen, like with everything, it has a spectrum. So you have people who are way, way, way radical, and I'm like closer to that group. And then you have people who are just like looking for a little bit of change, and you have people who are in the middle, and that's where most people are. And I think it's necessary for people like me and people even more radical than I am to continue to be loud, because I think radical people are always going to be the loudest, and then their thoughts trickle into the consciousness to like be interpreted by like what's acceptable.
I'm giving you a pen. Write an executive order.
Yeah. So,
and you're going to be held accountable for it. What are you writing?
So I think the police are the first thing, like the biggest thing that has to change right now. Okay. And I think it's a sweeping. I think it'd be like a sweeping reform that happened. So that would be demilitarizing them, because they don't need tanks.
They don't have tanks. They have a tank means they actually have a big rocket thing on it.
Yeah, not that.
They don't have that. They have movement carriers or anti things, but I wouldn't call that a tank.
That's fair.
Then again, I'm also a veteran, so
right. So you have
and a textualist. That's
and that. So you clocked me there. So but regardless, they have things that they shouldn't have. Like there's like I've showed up to a peaceful protest, and the police have been in full heavy riot gear with rifles and like large armored vehicles. Like we don't need all this. We're just here to like chant. So yeah, I think that'd be a big piece of it, demilitarizing them. I think definitely reanalyzing and probably cutting a lot of budgets for various police, because that budget can be fueled into various other systems.
But a lot of police have very little budget to begin with. I mean, look at Inkster. They have less than 12 police people, and they're one of the hardest hit cities in America. They don't even have a school district anymore.
Yeah, so that ties into, because
I'm sorry, you're saying something. I'm like, okay, let's apply this everywhere.
Yeah.
How's that benefit a city that can barely fund, or even some of the white suburbs? The police are so already hit so hard. They're less than 20 people precinct, and everyone's working crazy overtime, and they got nothing. They're trying to join SWAT in other cities because they want to afford things, and they want to be able to move up and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think so. Public workers, absolutely, like law enforcement or social workers and firefighters, all those people, they deserve pay. Like they should be able to live. I think part of it too is evaluating. So what that reform would be reevaluating the scope of the police. Like if they're for all law enforcement and protection, like that's where we need other services to step up as well, right? There are some situations where you don't necessarily always need a cop to show up to a situation. Sometimes you need like a mediator. Sometimes you need a social worker. Sometimes you need like
the cops act as security for that group.
They could, yeah, and that's like
they do. When you talk about like what happened in the Chazzy Chop, one of the biggest complaints was medical and firefighters couldn't come out because they wouldn't allow police. Well, when there's a shooting, medical is not going to come out if the area is not secure. Police act as their security.
I think, well, there's part of it too, because
I'm sorry, I'm making things difficult on purpose, by the way. So anyone that's calling me a dick and everything like that, I'm challenging this because I want to know like where that line is drawn.
Yeah, I think the line can be pushed pretty far because, again, I think this all ties to so many different issues because like part of cities not having the proper funding, you know, you have businesses not paying taxes. You have billionaires that are running rampant through the cities. So like that all ties in as well. But I think there's just the movement's also looking for a better way to accomplish these goals. So because one of the issues with police brutality is police shooting too often, right? Like they shouldn't, like, why is the gun always the like very often the first thing to go for? Like not everyone needs to be shot and killed. Not every situation needs to be de-escalated with a gun. You know, that's why I think it's not just like, there aren't just like a couple easy checklist things. I think it's a huge system reform. Like it's a lot that's going to have to go into this because there's like the points you bring up, like we need to figure out all that stuff. And I think too, a lot of this is more so affecting larger cities because, I'm not the most concerned about a cop in like Cadillac, Michigan. But I do at least care that if I'm in Cadillac, I'm not going to get like racially profiled, right? Yeah. I care about that because that is a real thing. So whatever has to come from that, it's some sort of training that's ongoing or something like that. Yeah, I'm not one thing I humbly admit, I'm not a policymaker, so that's not that's not my bread and butter.
Well, I think getting back to the question, I'm looking for like if you could write a law, if you could write a rule, like if I could write any rule right now, if I could write a law, my law would probably be something like term limits, and will upset a lot of people, but I believe in term limits, and I believe that would ripple through and change a lot of things that are happening today.
For sure.
I'm looking for something, that can be implemented.
You know what? I've made up my mind.
Okay.
Because I think everything's tied to money. So I'm going to say, tax the heck out of the rich and corporations.
Okay. What does that mean? Are we talking about the people that make above a certain number? Are we talking about an escalating number? Because we see how some people break this down, and they kind of look dumb, like they can't do math and what that means. Because sometimes when people say the 1% or 2%, they realize, or they say above a certain thing, and then they're just taxing out of a small business person more than they're taxing a larger business that gives X amount of charity and X amount over here. And, there's an escalation involved.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I mean,
I know I messed up some words there, but
so our tax system's already ridiculous. So like
it is.
That's going to need right. That's going to need some reform as well. Like, because a small business owner shouldn't have to worry about that. Like I'm going to get incorrectly because
in fact, I think it actually kind of hurt the small business owner.
Right. So that's why, I mean, obviously there's more.
Most of our tax rules do hurt small business owners as it is.
Yeah.
Very hard for
it needs to be way more targeted because there are people who like, I often don't think people realize the difference between a millionaire and a billionaire. Like that is a vast difference. Like a billionaire can afford literally everything. Like what can you not afford as a billionaire? And you need an economist for this part, but begin ramping up that tax scale on people who have everything, right? Why do they get to avoid taxes? Like those taxes can be used to be put into these public systems to reform the things that we need reforming. Like our public safety workers can have the income they need. They can put food on their table. They don't have to work 70-hour work weeks just to like keep the community safe and like keep themselves fed, right? They can have income. People can have not 401ks. People can have pensions and whatnot again.
Yeah. I think the way, actually, because remember, pensions come from the company, not from the government. So if you're taxing the company more, you're not pushing for pensions. If you're taxing the people that are paying your wages, if you're saying that they need to pay government more, you're actually saying, I'm not, something might happen, trickle down the line. It may or may not ever, it's all individual. You never know what happens. So I don't think taxing the rich is going to trickle down well and going to help you. I think decreasing taxes on a whole and decreasing the government on a whole is actually, but then again, when you say radical, that means different than if I say I'm radical, I think.
So that's why it's been so hard for me to answer this question with like, what's the one thing I do? Because I don't think there's a one thing that will solve anything. No. I think a lot of things that need to change, right? And like you're right too. Like part of that, and like we don't
need ripple effects is what you need, because there's some things,
tons of ripples
that you can't just implement. And, like universal health care, great. However, that's not going to solve everything right now. First, you need to go after the pharmaceuticals, and then that will have a ripple effect that, that may change the way we, it may change a lot of people's minds about universal health care. If the pharmaceutical thing, why can't we go after monopolies again? That's not, I'm going to edit a lot of this out, by the way, because that's cool. But, I'm enjoying riffing with you. If you need to go, please let me know, and I could end this right now.
It's cool. No, I think, I just think it's really good. Yeah, everything's all just like intertwined. And I think, I'm very far left. But I think there are pieces that, people on the right don't necessarily realize that people on the left are looking at it as well, right? They want government out of their business. And it's like, yeah, we do too. But in order to do that, like in the current state of things, we kind of need a little bit more, like the government needs to grow a little bit so we can shrink it, which is kind of weird. And it is counterproductive. Almost.
Yeah, I don't know how that works. Grow a little bit so you can shrink it.
That's why I think, again, a huge reform coming through. Like it's like, I don't want to put my trust in the hands of people who've been in Congress for 34 years, right? Because what you've been doing for the last 34 years is what you're going to do for the next 6. I don't care. But I need you to, I need fresh people in there who are going to make these changes, who are going to be like, you know what? Yeah, we don't need this government agency doing this bloated thing anymore. Great. That's good. We don't need the government in this, like intertwined with these businesses anymore. Great. So I think it's like a weird balancing act, but ultimately, we need new people up front. We need money going to the right places. We need people taken care of. And that's like the I don't know. I feel like those are like the key things.
Go ahead and say whatever you want to say, and pimp out whatever you want to pimp out.
Man, pimp out whatever I want to pimp out. I would say just Google your local Black Lives Matter movement, right? Just Google Black Lives Matter, then your city, see what pops up. And I think, because I don't think there's nothing specific that I want anyone to give to or go to, but it's important. Just look up what's happening in your city. Be aware of it. See what they need. Sometimes they just need water. They need, if you have if you're like an EMT, sometimes they need help with medical and whatnot, with heat exhaustion. Sometimes they need money. Just Google Black Lives Matter, your city, and see what you can do. Get involved. It can take like no effort. You can do it all from home sometimes.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
I was hoping a few more people were going to come on. I actually sent an invite to several people. I wanted kind of an open discussion where I was just
Yeah.
going to sit back and kind of direct it. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. But I really appreciate you coming on. If anyone, and yeah, I didn't pimp out all the things I normally gonna pimp out, so I'll take 2 seconds to say DV Radio. We're on DV Radio every Tuesday night when I have a new episode, because I'm on hiatus. So, but when I do have a new episode, it's on DV Radio Tuesday night at 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 1900 for people that still can't adjust to civilian time. And you, of course, on Mondays the new episodes come out on YouTube and all the podcasts, and now Facebook, because I've been uploading them to Facebook as well. But they're almost all the podcast apps. And if you want to know what's going on, I will be posting stuff up on the website Toaden.com. Maybe I'll only post podcast related stuff on MediaLitterSandwich.com, but Toaden.com or all the Facebook pages, the Toaden one, Media Litter Sandwich one, or the groups. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed our discussion, and may the algorithms be in your favor.